Hello boys and girls, and welcome back to art. So last week we started adding some shapes to our Kandinsky abstract art projects, and some of you guys have sent me some progress on your work and they look awesome. Some of you guys even joined me on Zoom this week, and I got to ask you guys kind of how many supplies are we working with at home, and a lot of you guys have told me that you do have Sharpies and you do have coloring materials, so that's really awesome. So if you do have a Sharpie, I would really recommend tracing everything you drew with a Sharpie really slowly before you go on to coloring. It really helps make the drawing stand out. If you don't have a Sharpie, any black marker really is fine, like a black Crayola marker or whatever it is you need to use. And if you don't have anything at all, or a black crayon works too really well. If you don't have any of those things, that is fine too. Just take your pencil and go along your lines, and this time push a little bit harder to make your lines more visible, okay? So this week, after you trace or not trace, we're gonna talk about adding colors. So I'm gonna show you guys how I colored this, but first I wanna talk about my color choices. You need to know what, before you start coloring, you do need to know what color you're gonna put in your background, because that color, which mine is yellow, will not be anywhere else unless it's going into a negative space. So I don't know if some of you guys decided to play around with positive space and negative space, but if you have a negative space and you want it to look like that space has nothing in it, you will color it with the background color. So I chose yellow as my background color, and I knew that I was going to use yellow before I started coloring everything else, so that I could put it aside. And I colored everything yellow last. That was the last thing I did. Also notice that I don't have a ton of colors going on here. I think I have this turquoisey blue, light blue, lime green, light pink, dark pink. That's it. So that's about 4 colors that I repeated over and over and over again, and that's called a color scheme. You don't have to do it this way. You can include as many colors as you want, but you can also try a color scheme. Also notice that every single time I was coloring and I reached a line with the Sharpie, I stopped and switched colors. So I know this is all one circle, but I didn't want to color the whole circle one color. I wanted to use the lines that were interacting with the circle to kind of show me where I should be switching my colors, okay? Because if I just took this whole circle and colored it one color, you wouldn't really be getting this cool effect where things are overlapping and interacting with each other. So another rule is every time you come across a Sharpie line, you have to switch the color. So I have light blue, lime green, light blue, lime green. I didn't just take my Sharpie and color this whole thing one color. So that is why this part of the project does take a long time, and there is no due date for this. So even if you work on it for 3 weeks and then send it to me in 3 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever, just like in the classroom, I never kind of tell you guys that things have to be done a certain day. I'd rather you just kind of pick it up when you can, work on it, take your time, and make it something really special. So don't feel like it needs to be done this week and you're just taking your whatever coloring tool you're using just to get it done. So know that you do have time, okay, to finish this. So here we go. Let's talk about how we're gonna do this. So here is the uncolored version of my project, and we're gonna color it together, and I'm going to use colored pencils, but again, you use whatever you have at home. I would suggest though that you use crayons or colored pencils over markers, because sometimes markers can just be a little too dark. Like for example, if you were gonna use a light blue or a dark blue and you put it against this black Sharpie line, sometimes the Sharpie line gets lost in that dark blue because it's just as dark as the marker. So colored pencils, if I use a dark blue, it's dark, but it's still light enough where it doesn't take over my drawing. I also like colored pencils because sometimes you can erase them, maybe not all the way, but it definitely helps. So if you make a mistake, you can slightly erase some of your mistakes. And I just think it looks a little bit nicer to have a lighter material. So colored pencils or crayons would be fine. If you don't have them and you only have markers, markers are great too. So don't feel like you can't use the markers. Just making a suggestion, because I know some of you have some options. So we just talked about color scheme, and again, you don't have to, but here is, when I'm thinking about my background color, I'm thinking about spaces like this that don't have anything in them. So all of this, and you shouldn't have two background colors, you should only have one, because there's a lot going on here. And if you have too many colors in the shapes and then too many colors in the background, this starts to make no sense. So we do only want to have one color in our background. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about right now. All of this space here is gonna be one color. And I have to put that color aside and make sure that I don't use it unless I'm filling in a negative space. And this would probably be negative. And that's probably gonna be negative. Maybe I could make these negative. Anything that is inside of something can be negative, okay? So that could be negative. Looking for other things. There's more somewhere, okay? So I'm gonna start, hard to know where to start. I'm going to start here. And whether you're using crayons, colored pencils, markers, these are the kind of strokes that we want, where it's not our whole arm that's moving, it's just the fingers and the wrist, little small strokes staying in the lines. Or if you're using a marker, outline it first and then fill in, like we learn in class. Now I'm choosing to do a pattern of two colors where it's gonna be maybe yellow, green, yellow, green, yellow, green, but I could do this a whole rainbow if I wanted. So I would suggest kind of having a plan for your colors before you jump in. I'm gonna use this turquoise actually. Okay, so notice that even though this is kind of all one big space, I do have a line telling me to stop. So I have to stop here. I cannot continue coloring this shape with the blue. So make sure that whenever you come across the Sharpie line, you stop and you switch. Now this one could be green. I could do this green here, but because I have this line kind of interrupting this rectangle, something is kind of telling me that I should not continue this pattern and that I should switch to something totally different that I haven't used yet. And those are some of the little difficult decisions that you're going to have to make when you're coloring. So I'm just gonna do this rectangle and a little bit of this circle with you guys, and then I'm gonna stop because obviously you guys don't wanna sit here and watch me color this whole thing. So why did I jump over here and do the same yellow? Because again, I have this rectangle here, and then I have lines kind of slicing right through it, and it just kind of made me feel that where the lines are slicing through it, maybe I would have a repeating color. That is not, there is no right or wrong way to do it. I did not have to put two light yellows, but that is just, that was the color that was calling my name. Okay, so then I would fill in with my turquoise again. Okay, so I think you guys get the idea with that one, okay? So over here, we're gonna jump to this circle because there is some negative space here too, which it doesn't have to be, but that is what I feel like doing. So at this point, I would have to know in my mind what my background color is going to be, and I chose this bright pink. So this whole thing is bright pink, and that is why it takes a little bit of time to color, or a lot of time to color. Remember guys, when you have a big space to fill in, don't push hard. The harder you push, the longer it takes to fill in spaces. So just really light on your materials, soft little strokes, little circular motions, because if you're pushing hard, another thing that you might see start to happen, you get these lines and it doesn't look smooth. So you want to keep it soft so that it looks blended, and we avoid getting these lines everywhere, because those lines are now going to take away from the shapes that are really supposed to be popping out. The background should be soft and subtle and quiet, so nice and soft. And then of course it's faster too. So because this is negative here, I'm going to color this one in the same color. And any shape that I want to be negative, I could go around and kind of fill in like this. This shape cannot be negative. So just an example, this one cannot be negative because it is not, even though it's inside of this circle, it's not completely inside. I'm still exposed to the outside. So this is background. Sorry, my table is shaking. This is all background here. I'm trying to color this as fast as I can. And actually this is all background too. So this cannot be negative because it's technically touching the background. It's not completely inside of something. Like this one is completely surrounded and safe by a positive space. This one's almost completely inside, but then right here, it's touching the background. So this cannot be a negative space. That's just an example of something that might look like you might be able to do it negative, but it won't look negative. If you do color it with the background color, it's just gonna look like part of the background. It's not going to look like an empty space inside of a shape. And I'm not saying that you can't color it the same color, but it won't have the same effect like these do when it's not totally surrounded. So I'm gonna color, let's see, I'm gonna do my yellow here for the shape. So I am doing a color scheme. I'm trying to repeat the same colors over and over again. And I would color, color, color. I'm gonna go faster. I'm gonna scribble a little bit, but you should not do that. And then I'm gonna, when I hit this line, I'm gonna switch. And I think I am going to have to add one more color to my color scheme. I'm not sure what it is yet. I think it's gonna be dark blue because I actually used the dark blue over here already. So I'm gonna do turquoise, jump turquoise, and then in between I'll go back to that blue that I'd used before. Okay, so this is going to take some time, especially if you added a ton of details last week. So again, just take your time, do your best, and send me your work or join me on Zoom next week on Wednesday and just hold it up to the screen so I could see how you're doing and give you some feedback. Okay, so enjoy it, have fun, take your time, and as usual, do your best. And I'll see you guys next week.